Hello, I'm Raquel Reinwald, a current master's degree student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in the Department of Second Language Studies. In this video series, we're going to be covering some alternative and not so alternative approaches to language teaching. This particular episode will be covering critical language pedagogy. So let's jump right on in with an overview of this approach. Critical pedagogy is teaching for social justice in ways that support the development of active, engaged citizens who will, as circumstances permit, critically inquire into why the lives of so many human beings, perhaps including their own, are materially, psychologically, socially, and spiritually inadequate. Citizens who will be prepared to seek out solutions to the problems they find and encounter and take action accordingly. So, one thing I kind of want to say, I think critical language pedagogy is very broad. So you could say it's not an alternative approach to second language teaching. You could say it's a philosophy, it's a way of life, it's a way of believing and viewing the world. But in this lecture, I'm going to try to talk about it as an approach, components of CLP. So first is teacher's critical or oppositional stance. So this means the teacher has to believe that there is something that they think should change in society, or that they're not necessarily with the mainstream belief all of the time. Another step is critical needs analysis. So this is looking at your class through a critical lens, which also means looking at who are my students, what's their social status, what type of knowledge do they bring to the classroom, and kind of the environment that they're learning and living in. A part of that could be a negotiated syllabus. So codes are basically images that symbolize some debatable topic. Dialogue, and this just doesn't mean you read a dialogue like Sally and Kim or whatever. It means having a deep, sometimes debatable discussion about something, identifying an issue, identifying a problem and possibly solutions, or flushing that out. Participatory material development. Of course, if you have a negotiated syllabus, some of the topics might not be in your textbook or other materials that you have. A lot of CLP materials are adapted or made. One of the hardest sections and least researched sections of CLP is critical or participatory / democratic assessment. So how are you going to assess students? And also another part that's very difficult is action orientation. How are we going to implement that beyond the classroom? So some other features of CLP. This can have a focus on the learner's current situation or long-term in fostering equity and justice for all. And another feature is that materials are usually brought in from real world or made. So the problems with CLP in action. I think CLP is really idealistic. We want a better world. We want to change how people interact in the world, or change how they view others. Probably there's going to be opposition from the administrators and parents. Also, we already talked, it's difficult to make your own materials or have students bring in materials. You let them choose the topics, but then you're hey, now you have to bring in stuff that's extra homework for them, and maybe they don't actually want to do that. Also, for the action orientation part of those components, sometimes it's difficult to find local organizations that students or yourself can be a part of. Another point that I think other people discussed, sometimes it can be too laissez-faire or too free in the classroom, or that's what people think CLP can be. One of the major oppositions is that these beliefs, I want the world to change, are my beliefs as a teacher, and then I want you to all think that my version of equality is what you guys should have. CLP distinctly comes from Europe and the West, so our version of CLP may be different than some other areas of the world, right? So I just wrote down some of the activities and materials that other people have used in real life. One simple thing could be role plays that include a problem situation. Another example is writing up a marriage contract. So what's an equal marriage? Who has the rights within a marriage? Planning a menu for a school cafeteria. So this is kind of junk food versus health food. Do they have the right to choose junk food, right? This was another example in the book, reading a graphic novel about issues in South Africa. So this was in South Africa, students were reading about issues that were happening during apartheid. Of course, debates. I've had several debates in my class. Even something like describing students' identity. Materials, graphic novels, of course newspapers, textbook pictures or dialogues, For younger children, social issue picture books. Also, I think a lot of ELF or world languages materials kind of have a critical language pedagogy focus in the fact that like you're trying to make English have more power to everyone and not just native speakers, right?
Now that we've heard that lecture, let's move on to some student perspectives.
I think it's important for us as teachers and students to realize that everything's related. So we may feel like we're learning an isolated subject, say language, whatever, but really that language is a part of a community, it's part of a people, it's part of a greater community called humans. So it reminds us that there's no such thing as the isolation or siloed subjects. But we've created that kind of world for ourselves, but it breaks down those barriers and say, oh, I can learn this language, and I might also have a responsibility to think about something that affects the users of this language, or people in general.
I like to use critical language pedagogy as a way to engage students with critical thinking skills. So if I know that's what I'm going to be teaching about, then I'll use issues from critical pedagogy to do that.
So that's it for this lecture. By far, this is not all the information on this approach, and if you're interested, you should do some more research. But I hope this information will start you off on the right foot to second language teaching. Good luck, and goodbye.